All right, so we're going live. You seeing us as live yet, Alex?
Waiting for it.
Wait for it.
I don't know, because last time it didn't tell me, and then it just popped up after you said we were live. I was like, oh, so you're listening to Walt now.
Yeah, I'm seeing it live now, so I don't know.
What the heck?
Yeah.
It's a test. That's what it is.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm coming in through Clippy for you guys, and now I'm hearing it Clippy on you guys.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it is connection then. It's a weird connection issue, though. And reboot should have. Well, the other thing you can try later on. Are you going through Wi-Fi?
Yes, I am going through Wi-Fi.
The other thing you can try to do is reboot your modem after we're done. See if that helps.
Well, we have been having Comcast issues lately.
Oh, really?
Oh, same. I had to call and yell at them, and then they gave me credit. So I haven't paid my phone bill in 6 months. I have so much credit.
Mm-hmm. Well, with that happy thought in mind, let's start the show. Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen here with Alex King and Bill G. Today is Tuesday, July the 9th, 2019. It's 8 a.m. in New York, 5 a.m. in Los Angeles, 1 p.m. in London, 9 p.m. in Tokyo, 10 p.m. in Sydney, and some other time everywhere else. But wherever you are in the world, for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. I mean, there are 24 time zones when you go around the world. This could take like hours to do if I did all 24 and start naming cities for them. I mean, this could go on forever. So
True.
I think 5 is the limit for now. We'll go with that for a moment.
Okay, cool.
Especially since we have something new to look at because Alex has new ears on.
I do.
There they are. Yeah. Of course, podcast listeners can't see the ears, but what I will tell you is when she hits a button, they splash at you, which is kind of cool.
Ready?
There it goes.
Oh, shit.
So you're going to have to tune into the YouTube in order to see, what it's actually looking like. But they're cool. They're good. That's how we know that Alex is with us because the ears are always. And Bill, of course, is sitting there looking very pensive. You're pensive today, Bill. Why are you pensive today?
I'm not pensive. I'm just here.
That's his resting bitch face. That's what happens.
Uh-huh.
My what face?
You never heard of resting bitch face? That's just,
No.
The natural face that your face makes when you're just.
Oh.
Like, see how I look angry when I'm. That's
right.
Bitch face. Yeah.
Oh my God! I never thought of that. I'll remember that. I'll keep smiling all the time, even when I'm not feeling it.
Yes, it's called RBF.
RBS.
RBF, resting bitch face.
Resting. Oh, okay. Right. Got it.
Learned you something new today, guys.
You can always count on a millennial to give you a new acronym or a new phrase.
I'm doing at least one per day, so.
We're here all week, folks.
Literally.
So anyway, Bill came up with a topic for today, and so Bill, I'm going to let you introduce it. Where did this topic come from? I mean, is this like from real life, or is this like a client that you've been dealing with, or is this it just came to you because you read an article somewhere online, or what?
Well, this is kind of thing that happens all the time with clients and also my own life. What the heck? I mean, I always bring in stuff for my own life. The topic I'm picking today is what I call family drag.
Family drag. Mm-hmm.
Family drag.
We're not talking about cross-dressing here, I take it.
Was just going
to say. No, we are not. No. Actually, I went to a wedding about a month ago, and they had as entertainment drag queens.
Oh my God! I still want to do that for my wedding.
And after watching that, I was like, drag queens should be at every wedding.
Facts.
That was enormously entertaining. But anyway, That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about family drag. And what I mean by family drag is that a lot of us, especially when we decide to go in this deliberate creative path, or we go on a spiritual path or something like that, and we're doing this, we're doing all this great internal work, we're feeling better, we're starting to manifest, and our families are just not having none of it because they're all very comfortable in their own suffering. and they see you being happy, and they're like, he is either, they say that you're either totally delusional or that you are you're breaking tradition, you're not doing, not following the the miserable path that we laid out for you. What's up with that? And I've actually had clients where marriages have broken up over this issue, where one person decides to try and make their lives better by they start doing a more spiritual path, they start meditating, they start attending retreats, they start learning all this self-help healing process, and then their spouse is absolutely doesn't want anything to do with it. They start making fun of them, they start shaming them, and it gets to a point where they're like, this marriage ain't working out anymore, I'm out of here. And so what I wanted to talk about though today is that phenomenon that happens when people decide to change their lives and their families are being relatively unsupportive of it, and where they have to make a choice of whether or not to stay around that energy or make a clean break and do something else. And to follow their joy.
Or a third option, and this is the hardest one. Okay. The third option is to stay with the family and not be bothered by it. And that takes some learning. That takes some practice getting there. Because, I mean, the longer you've been with your family, which is pretty much all your life, you've got all this momentum built up. Right. You have all this momentum built up in the direction you don't want to be, and now you're learning how to be what you want to be, and your family's saying, no, that's not the way we do it. We do it over here this way, this really unconventional, unhappy, dysfunctional way that you're supposed to be doing. What are you doing? Don't do that. No.
Now, I come from a long line of Germans, and I don't now I'm not going to not to say anything bad about any other kind of ethnic groups or whatever, but as far as the Germans are concerned, they seem to delight in the misery of others.
Well, there are philosophical roots to that.
Yes.
I mean, when you go back to the ancient, like 400 or 500 years ago, German philosophers, I mean, some of the philosophy was absolutely
morose.
It was just disgusting.
Yeah. You especially go back to Nietzsche, you go back to Kierkegaard and oh gosh, some of the other ones, some of Hitler's favorites,
Some of Hitler's favorites. I'm not gonna have that guy.
Hey, Hitler, for all Hitler's faults, he was well read.
I wish he'd stuck to reading and art. If he had stuck to that, we would have been all saved. It would have been great. I mean, did you know that, Alex? That Hitler was actually an art student?
I did not.
He was, and he was not very good, which is probably why he didn't stick with it. But can you imagine how great it would have been if he was good at it? Because then he would have done everything else, because he would have enjoyed doing his art.
If you say so.
Yeah. Well, actually, Richard Wagner and Hitler had a lot in common in terms of philosophy, and Wagner decided to become, a composer.
He did. And produced some pretty good music too.
And he wrote some really, really good music. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and the best part was he didn't become chancellor. So.
Right.
Oh boy.
I'm telling you, though, there are so many people who, and we could even name some today, who have tendencies toward, let's just call it telling other people how to live their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Right. There are so many of them, and if they find something that allows them to channel what they're doing or what they want into their activity, such as creating art, they usually become fairly, by comparison, relatively good citizens. If they don't, then they become Hitlers. Yeah. They're basically acting out. That's what it amounts to. Because, I mean, anybody who's getting into a political arena especially in the more extreme sense, is acting out. They're saying, I'm not happy, and I'm going to demand that everybody behave the way that I want them to behave so that I can be happy.
Right.
which is a pattern that those of us who are studying deliberate creation recognize really well.
Right. Absolutely.
So that's a long-winded way of saying that's the hard route to go, to actually stay in the family, learn how to not be put off by the family, to continue to channel the way you want to channel, and to not be caught up in the whirlwind of you have to behave the way we want you to behave so that we can be happy.
Right. Right. And actually, and I've had several clients come to me with these kind of problems, and they are faced with that problem. You know, do I stay in the family and try and live my life as a deliberate creator, or do I leave the family and go my own way? And it really comes down to a case by case of, you know, what kind of history do you have? You know, how did they treat you as a kid? And do you have, is the damage so much that there's no reconciling this and it's time to move on? Or is there enough love there to salvage a relationship, or at least having enough of a family connection where you can still love each other but just agree to disagree?
That's a good first step too. Agree to disagree. You know, I mean, how many families can't do that? Well, not can't, refuse to. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, refuse to is the key, because a lot. I mean, it's literally a mental choice. Like, you have to choose to agree to disagree. If you can just let it go.
That's right. Yeah.
And on a spiritual level too. I mean, I actually just before the podcast, I just finished writing my weekly blog, and it was about family karma. And family karma has a lot to do with you know, things that happen within the family in prior generations that get, and energy we already know can get encoded onto on a person's DNA, and so we have to clear the DNA a lot of times. That we're already familiar with the idea that we inherit certain programs from past lives, that we can bring over sins of the past from past lives over into our present life that we need to clear in order for us to move on and not have to repeat those mistakes over again. We also know that when we are born, we choose the family that we're born into. So that way we can learn certain lessons, have certain experiences, and live those, and that way we can take that information back to source.
Okay, so let me bring this into what I'll call a real world scenario. Okay. I think we'll have to kind of create a fictional family here, but I'll make it as familiar as I possibly can to as many listeners as I possibly can. But we'll imagine that there is a mother who is an alcoholic, and there is a father who is gone, and then there are the kids who are trying to figure out how to become adults with no guidance and no role modeling. Okay, so we all know that leads to bad stuff.
Yeah.
Now, as they're living in the family, one of those kids discovers law of attraction and discovers the idea of deliberate creation. Okay, and in the course of discovering that, starts sharing it with the mom. Can't share it with the dad because the dad's not there. You know, so you have to share it with the mom, and the mom is too drunk to even notice. And when she is sober, she's basically screaming at them and doesn't want to hear any of that stuff, and basically shames them about having brought it up in the first place. So there's the scenario you're talking about. It's kind of an extreme example, but there's the scenario. That's the family dynamic that won't accept what you're doing. So what strategies do we have at this point?
Well, if this person was seeing me as a client and they were telling me that this is the family dynamic they came from, we would first then do the soul research. We would find out what it is that they came here to learn from these particular individuals that they made the deal with, that they came to do. Now, if the soul research...
What you're talking about right now is doing it using SRT, right?
Right.
What I'm asking is, what are the overall options? SRT isn't the only option.
Right. That's true. Well, again, that's how I would approach it, but you're right there. Well, your options for that particular person is to make a clean break from that family.
Wow,
assuming that they're old enough to do so.
We're getting a lot of delay from you right now, so something's going on with your signal. But just want our listeners to know that do not adjust your sets. It actually is Bill's channel. It's not you.
Yeah. We're thinking that's an internet connection thing. It's not a computer thing. At least we don't think so.
No. And we won't blame Comcast. Oh, I said the word. Oh, no.
I avoided it. You said it.
You leave my Comcast alone.
Well, your Comcast is doing just fine. It's Bill's Comcast that's having the problem.
Darn Skippy. I don't know about Virginia, Vermont's Comcast, but out here in the Cape, we got premium service.
Okay, all right. So one option is to leave the family.
Option is to leave the family,
which most people don't consider to be an option, but nevertheless, that needs to be put on the table.
And actually, I have a client that did that actually left the family for that reason, because they had an extreme example like that. That was their family. So, Alex, you were saying?
I was going to say, when it comes to stuff like that, in the extreme example where your situation is toxic, you need to walk away regardless. Like, don't even stop to think about it. If it's toxic, you got to go, because it's only going to leak into your vibration, and then that's just going to ruin your life at the end of the day. So walking away is the best thing, in my opinion.
And yet I can also point to many, many examples of people who have posted online. That's where I see most of it, about how they can't leave home. They don't have the money. They don't have the job. They don't have the place to live. They don't have any. Where would they go? What would they do? They feel trapped. They feel tied to the family, and they don't feel like they have any kind of power to do anything. So,
well,
I mean, Alex, what do you do?
You mentally leave the family. Like, you don't have to leave the family. Just, cut them off. Silent treatment, ignoring them, and just go about your day and do you.
Does that work? Have you done that?
I had to do that. Yes. My mother had a live-in boyfriend, and we did not get along at all. And it got to the point where I was just like, all right, you don't exist in my world. And that was it. And he would walk through the house, and he would get pissed off when I was in the kitchen, because he wanted to be in the kitchen. So he felt my energy be like, don't come near me, don't come in my bubble. So he'd be like, and we were fighting over the fact that he smoked in the house, and I had asthma, and it was toxic. So literally. So I mean, eventually, law of attraction, he's out of our lives now. So mental bubbles work.
And if you can't leave, another option is to try to figure out what the lessons are within the captivity of the situation. Because people who are, talk about a very toxic situation. If you're like in prison or something like that, you can't leave. They will shoot you if you leave. So you have to, and if you want to learn to be a deliberate creator, and you happen to be incarcerated at the same time, you have to learn how to be the deliberate creator within the captivity, within the toxic situation, because you can't leave. You're not allowed to leave.
So now one of the questions that someone will raise, and this one comes up a lot, is how long is it going to take? I mean, okay, I'm going to adopt this new attitude. I'm going to ignore those who are not treating me the way I want to be treated. I'm just not going to pay attention. I'm not going to respond to them or anything. But they continue to be there, and they keep attacking me. They keep doing this. They keep saying that, all this kind of stuff. How long is it going to take before I can finally attract them going away? That's a very common question.
I mean, once you put it into your mindset that that's what you're going to do, it's already done. It's already in the works. Whether they physically leave or whether you just come to the terms on your own that, you know what, I can't even hear them anymore. They're gone. So as soon as you want it to happen, that's when it'll happen.
That last bit is important, I think.
Right. It's a choice.
Yeah, it's a choice. Do I hear that person? Do I see that person? It sounds strange, but you can actually remove somebody from your experience even though they're still physically there.
Yeah, it's called selective hearing and selective sight.
Yeah. And it's a
Men
skill.
do it all the time to women.
I've got news for you. It works that way too.
It does. It does. It's called spouse hearing.
It's not just spouses. Actually, I've never had that ever with my spouse. I had it a lot with either girlfriends or perhaps girlfriends. There's a lot of that. And in my generation, we called it game playing, but it still amounts to the same thing. Right?
Games are still played.
They still are.
Facts. Facts.
So, okay, well, then that's a strategy. That's a strategy that somebody can use, all right? So are there other strategies that we can use?
Well, advice I sometimes give people when they come to me with these types of situations is start to develop an exit plan. And sometimes the development of the exit plan itself is enough to change the situation energetically.
Why do you think that is?
Because the power, and when you think in terms of negotiation, when you go into have a negotiation, whether it be a contract negotiation or some kind of negotiation within the family, the person with the most amount of power in that negotiation is the one who has the power to walk away. True. When you go into a negotiation and you do not have the power to walk away from it, then what you're saying, what you've already agreed that no matter how this turns out, I am going to be stuck with the situation.
Which is the issue of the person you referred to earlier, the incarcerated person. They really can't walk away from it.
They can't. So already you're in a position of a lack of power. But now, if in your mind, energetically, you can walk away, like you're not going to let that person into your energy anymore, then you are walking away at that point. But on a more internal level. Now, that's a lot harder to do, especially in a hostile, toxic situation. So it takes a lot more doing to do that.
Well, that's where I think it becomes valuable to understand the nature of energy.
Right.
Because when we understand what energy is and how it works, and some very basic concepts such as everybody wants energy, and all drama is about trying to acquire energy.
Right.
And when you understand that, then even if you're in that really toxic environment, you understand that whoever that horrible person is, or whoever that horrible group is, who are trying to bully you, humiliate you, whatever it is, they're basically trying to get energy.
Right.
So once you have that understanding, aren't there certain things you can do in order to help shift the energy around?
Right. And that's why I'm saying, in your mind, start developing the exit strategy, so that way you can separate yourself from the energy of that other person. So that way they're no longer taking your energy anymore. You're saying, I'm going to, at least in my mind and in my heart, I'm going to be kind of separating myself from the situation.
Which is kind of like what Alex described. I mean, when she described that she was in that scenario with the boyfriend who, not her boyfriend, but with the boyfriend who was living in the house, who was just, she and that person were like oil and water. They didn't mix at all.
Nope.
And eventually the person left. It took a while. And we're kind of zooming in now on the question I was trying to raise at that point. Why did it take so long? I think it took so long because it took you a while to shift your energy.
Right.
Oh, mate. Oh.
That's my take on it. And I think that the more that you shift your energy, the more that it becomes an undesirable environment for him to stay in.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because even when you've decided, even when you've made that decision, I am going to separate my energy from the situation, you're not 100% of the way there yet.
Right.
You're still having an emotional response to whatever toxicity is happening towards you, and that's what they're feeding off of.
Exactly.
And so it takes a while to shut that spigot off.
And it's also something, this is where I like to remind people that you can't make them do anything. They still have to make the decision themselves.
Yes.
Right.
What you're trying to do is you're trying to establish an environment that encourages them to take the step you want them to take.
Right.
And that can be very effective.
Yeah. But again, when you're talking about, I mean, here you have a situation of a live-in boyfriend, but say that person wasn't the live-in boyfriend. This person was actually married to your mother, or this person was actually your father, or, now you've got something it's going to be a little harder to get him to leave the house.
Stranger things have happened, though.
Was it?
What's your experience with that, Alex? Because you've actually dealt with people who were kind of ensconced.
Been there, done that, got the T-shirt. So, in my situation, I mean, at the time I was 11, so I wasn't realizing that I was manifesting this whole situation. But
we're amazing manifestors. We can do it even when we don't understand how it works. We still do it.
Exactly. Hindsight being 2020. I realized that I was like, you know what? They just shouldn't be together. It just shouldn't be. And then I just went about my day, and I just kept shaking my head and saying that, and then eventually, lo and behold, hey, we're getting a divorce. Oh, really? Do you want to go to therapy to talk about it? Not really. I'm cool. Just riding the wave. I'm totally cool. I'm glad. And, because I was all about, no offense to white people, but y'all make divorce sound exciting, because when you're children, everybody's like, you're going to get 2 Christmases. You're going to have 2 birthdays. It's going to be fantastic. So I was like, yes, let's do this divorce thing.
I want to know what white people you've known, because that's not anything like my experience.
Well,
actually,
I grew up in a rich town, so
you're onto something there, because when my wife's parents got divorced, it was after that her father took her to Guadalupe. It was after that her father would fly her out to California every summer.
Yep. One parent, in some situations, one parent does try to one-up the other parent as far as, trying to buy the love of the child. So it happens. It doesn't happen with you when you have multiples. Like there was 3 of us, so they really didn't care. So, we didn't get flown out to Hawaii and stuff like that. No, it wasn't happening. But did we go to Red Lobster? Sure. You do what you can with 3 kids.
Yeah, I don't think race has much to do with whether or not one of the parents tries to buy the love of the kids. I think that
No. That doesn't have anything to do with it. I'm just saying, I heard from my white friends that I was getting 2 birthdays and 2 Christmases. That's what I was That's how divorce was explained to me, which was I was a gung-ho for it.
Okay.
And I think my happy attitude about divorce kind of pushed it along.
well, that makes a big difference. I agree with that.
Right.
Yeah, that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't say I ever went through a divorce situation in my immediate family, so I've never had to deal with that directly. I saw it through extended family, cousins, and so forth. And from what I saw, none of them had that experience at all. Their experience was a little bit more painful than that.
Yeah.
It can be painful. It depends on how you see the situation or how the situation came about. So it all deals with family dynamics and, again, how you view the situation. Like I said, I was happy about it, so I had no issues.
Yeah.
It raises a point that I like to bring up occasionally, and I'm curious to know what you guys think about it. I like to argue for the concept of indifference. Because it's not an easy state to get to, but because you're talking about something that up until that point is very important to you. So becoming indifferent about something that's important to you is almost like a contradiction in terms. And yet, I argue that's the goal. The goal is to become indifferent to whoever that person is or whatever that situation is.
Facts.
Because you don't want to keep attracting it.
Right.
This is a key LOA concept. We attract what we focus on, whether we like it or not. Literally, if we focus on stuff that we don't like, we're going to attract more of the thing that we don't like. It's a hard thing to come to grips with the first time that you're exposed to it, especially when you think, "Wait a minute, no, I'm saying no, and the universe is saying yes, yes. You're attracting it. You're attracting it just by focusing on what you don't like. So indifference is actually the goal, but it's not an easy place to get to.
No.
Right. Actually, I think you're onto something there, because I just thinking about my own family. I have 3 brothers, and for the longest time, we were all trying to help each other because we all cared about each other tremendously, and we all had different ideas on how we were supposed to be living our lives, and we were each trying to tell each other what to do. It was only when I got to the point of saying, okay, you guys can live your lives. Really, you guys can live your lives. I am not going to give a crap one way or the other. What you guys do with your lives, if I think you've got happy marriages or I think you got unhappy marriages, how you raise your kids or whatever, I actually really don't care. Your karma is your karma. Your path is your path. My path is my path. We'll get together. We'll have drinks sometimes. We'll play t-ball. But then at the end of the day, we go home and we go back to living our lives.
Yeah.
And the only thing I want for them, the only thing I really truly want for them is I want them to be happy. And if they are happy in their misery, then okay, that's fine. I'm gonna live with that. And the thing is, I know I can't fix that.
Right.
Because they are not. First of all, they're not coming to me asking for help.
Thank you for pointing that one out. There are so many people who want to help when they're not asked.
Now, if they came to me asking for help, either through SRT or some other intervention, I'm likely to actually say no and refer them out to somebody else.
That's smart.
Yep.
Because again, it's not only is it none of my business, it is also, I have too much emotional attachment to whatever there is that they are going through. So it is much better for me to refer them out to somebody who they don't know. And I know lots of people. I know lots of other therapists. If they want SRT, I can give them the names of a dozen people they can go to. That is not me.
Right. And it's not related to them.
That is not related to you, right? And same thing with close friends. If close friends come to me and want to have SRT or whatever, I'm likely to refer them out for the same reasons. There's too much history. There's too much emotional attachment. And I'm going to feel emotionally invested in their success. And if they don't go exactly the way I think they should go, then I'm going to be hurt by that. And why would I want to put myself in that situation?
Isn't it interesting too? I mean, you're saying that primarily because you are a professional, and professionals know they're trained not to put themselves into that kind of situation. That's a situation that's going to lead to a disaster. And yet, so often among lay people, I guess, non-professionals, the kind of the common belief is, well, talk about it with somebody in your family, which is probably in many cases the worst thing you can do. But nevertheless, that's the go-to. I mean, that's the person you know. They know you so well. They should be able to give you the right advice. Not.
I mean, it's not so much that they won't give you the right advice. It's will you take it because it's them?
Partly that, yeah, and
I know.
Partly because they have a bias. I mean, like Bill says, they have their own ties in, so they have their own agenda. They have their own things that they want to have accomplished, and then that agenda may not match up with your improvement.
Right.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law is a great example of that, and she lives with us, and she tries to follow a more holistic life, whatever. She takes lots of supplements and whatever. And my wife is, she's an acupuncturist. She's medically trained. She knows what she is going through. And she'll sometimes come to her and says, I'm having something going on. I mean, she recently had a tooth extracted, and she couldn't understand why it was all swollen. And she was telling us this, and we were like, well, it's swollen because you had a tooth extracted.
Let's not avoid the obvious here.
That's your body is having a natural reaction to that. And she was like, no, it is something else. It is the anesthetic. It is something else. It is something else. And we're like, why don't you just call the dentist and find out? She's like, no, I'm not going to call the dentist. And we get into this argument.
What do you want us to do?
We're getting into this argument. And I had to point out to her again that my wife has a medical degree. You can actually kind of trust what she says. But again, because it's family, because it's her mother, because it all this other crap gets in the way. It's like, so our go-to right now whenever she comes to us with a medical problem is call the doctor. We're not going to tell you what's going on because we're only going to get into an argument.
Now, see,
and if we get into an argument,
you're the opposite. Why are you the opposite?
I take my family's professions and I use them to my advantage. Like if I have a workout problem, or if I'm not achieving a certain goal weight-wise, I call my brother and I'm like, hey, what's happening here? Why have I plateaued? And he'll help me out. If I have a medical issue, I will call my sister and I'll be like, hey, why is this happening? And sometimes she'll give me the answer, and sometimes she'll be asking and say, I'm not a doctor, leave me alone. And so, but because she was a nurse and an EMT, if something medically in her wheelhouse happens, I will call her.
Right. Yeah, the same thing happens in our family because Louise's sister-in-law, Joyce, is a registered nurse. So
Mhm.
she gets all the family calls about, what's this medical situation all about?
Yeah. What's a small?
Yeah. My mother is a registered nurse too, and she gets all the family medical calls too.
Mhm.
But I've found that whenever I call her for medical advice, I generally don't take the advice. I'll seek a second opinion because where she's coming from is a Western medical model that I don't usually subscribe to.
Okay. Then why did you call her?
And then I asked, why did I call her? Exactly. Why did I do that?
Well, there is a reason to do that. Like you said, you want to get separate opinions. Sometimes I do want to know what the Western medical viewpoint is. I go into it with the conscious awareness that what I'm going to get is an answer from the perspective of Western medicine.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of frames it for me. So now I'm not going to treat it like it's God. I'm going to treat it like, okay, this is what Western medicine says. Fine. Thank you, Joyce, for telling us that. I really appreciate that. And then I go to another source that has a different perspective. And now I can compare and contrast and say, okay, here's what they're telling me from the two different viewpoints. What way do I want to go?
Right. But if you ask a family member with that expertise, now there's an emotional element to it. There's an emotional, energetic element to it. And now, like Alex, when you call your sister the nurse EMT or whatever, and she tells you something, and you say, no, you're wrong, and then hang up on her, how is she going to feel?
You know what? I don't know from that point of view because I would never do that. But however, if she called me about a hair question and then hung and said, no, you're wrong, and hung up on me, I'd be pissed. I'd definitely be pissed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But if a hair client comes to you and asks for your opinion, and they say, no, I don't want to do that, and then walk out the door, no harm, no foul. You know, whatever. You do whatever the heck you want.
Yeah.
Well, I think it depends on what your experience is. I mean, in my case, with my profession for years was building websites and helping people with online marketing. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that became a big issue for me was people who refused to follow my marketing advice. They would follow the advice of some scam artist out there, and then they get bad results and they blame me. And I said, wait a minute, I don't like this formula. This formula does not work for me at all. And I get really upset about it. Mm-hmm. It took me a long time to realize I was the one setting that one up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's when you have to remind yourself, wait, why do I care?
Yeah. Well, more than that, what did I contribute to this? I contributed energetically to the idea that I had an expectation. The expectation was people weren't going to follow my advice. And so they didn't.
You put it out there.
That's right. And the same thing is true for when you go to talk to a family member who's an RN. If you go in with the expectation that RN is going to give you bad advice, why are you going to them in the first place?
Facts.
Now, Walt, have you ever built a website for a family member?
Once was enough.
Once was exactly.
but not for that reason.
Oh. Okay.
But once was enough because family members want you to do what you earn a living to do
for free.
And do it for free.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
It's the same thing though. It's still if one of Alex's relatives comes to her to get their hair done, they're going to have an expectation that they don't have to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
Nope. I set my boundaries.
Okay. Or if a family member comes to me for SRT, there's an expectation that they're getting it for free.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's the real question: whose boundary is it?
I say it's both because, for instance, my brother is a personal trainer and a boxing trainer and everything, and he won't train me because he said I won't train family.
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna cause a problem at some point, and I don't want to have an issue with you. So you're gonna, I'm gonna push you, and you're gonna feel like, no, I'm tired, I don't want to do this, but because I'm your brother, you can complain to me. No, I'm your trainer. Get off your butt and do what I tell you to do. So
right.
yeah, it's gonna be a problem. So he had said to me, I asked him he was doing online training because he's in Miami, and I was like, oh, can I join this? And he's like, no. I was like, ooh. And he was like, no. He's like, I just don't want to train family. And I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? You're right, though. You're right. Because I had to set my boundaries when it came to doing hair. Like, it came to the point where my friends and family were like, oh, can I come over and get my hair done? And they,
of course.
Yeah. And they'd be like, oh, I'll tip you. And that'd be great and all, but I still had to pay for these products, my time, my education, blah, blah, blah. So I said, no, you can come see me at the shop and get your hair done. I might give you a discount, friends and family, but those were the boundaries I set up. You have to come see me at the shop. But then when I was working at home, and it came to the point where people were like, oh, I still want to come see you, but now you're all the way in the Cape. All right, cool. Take the money you were going to give me and put it in your gas tank. And that was the agreement we came up with. So they, if it felt fair to me, I was like, put it in your gas tank. Then I don't feel like, you're putting all this effort towards, the fact that I'm the best stylist here. So we're evenly compensated. But like I said, you got to set your boundaries on both sides.
That's the key. And it's understanding that just because someone else is going to try to take advantage of your expertise doesn't mean it's their fault.
No, It's your fault for falling for it.
Well, actually, it's not even, their fault doesn't even come into the question. But since we like to think in terms of fault, then yeah, it's your fault. If you're going to put fault somewhere, put it on yourself. And my recommendation is don't put fault at all. Just simply recognize this is the way dynamics work. Doesn't matter whether they're family or not. They know you. I mean, it worked just as much with a high school friend who you're close with as it did with a family member, right?
Yep.
I mean, blood doesn't make that big of a difference.
No, it doesn't. It definitely doesn't. I'm indifferent about blood, let me tell you.
Understandable.
Like, I feel like the family you choose, the friends that you choose to be family are not to say more important, but like, those are the ones that you chose, even though, cosmically we did choose our family. But I feel like I'm less apt to cut them off as opposed to a family member who's being toxic. Like, I'd have to actually take a step back and think about it before I'm just like, no, I'm not talking. I'm done.
Yes.
Because this is someone I chose to be in my life. You know what I mean? And like, I put effort towards this as opposed to my father who was thrust upon me. So I'm just like, nah, I'm good.
Which really points to what I think is the most important piece of this of all, which is it's individual. Every single relationship you have is an individual relationship. They're all unique in their own ways.
Factuals.
And because they're all unique, you have to treat them differently. And you have to evaluate them differently. I mean, you described the kind of the boundary, the ground rule that you set with hair care. I did the same thing with online marketing because I used to get all kinds of questions about, requests for help and so forth. And ultimately, what I ended up deciding to do with that was I would, if somebody wanted to know how to do something, I would explain to them in short terms how to do it. If they wanted help doing it, I wanted to charge them for them.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, when I set that boundary, everybody stopped at that point.
You either get the money or you get less annoyed. It's a win-win.
There it is. Yes. So it actually worked out very nicely once I set that ground rule. The harder one for me was trying to figure out what a similar boundary would be for actual clients. Because clients also want to get the marketing for free. It's an interesting thing. Nobody wants to actually pay for marketing.
Nobody wants to pay for anything. They're all about the free 99. Like, the cheaper, the better. It's in our DNA. Like, the less we can pay, I'm not saying the better the quality, but definitely better for us.
So we think,
So we think.
So we think, and that's exactly what happens. I mean, marketing is when you ask somebody if they put together a business plan for their business that they're launching or that they already have established, I can guarantee you, and Billy, I'm sure you can confirm this, none of them ever build marketing into the budget.
No.
Nope.
It's never part of it. It's like that. Well, doesn't that come for free? I mean, well, you can just spam the search engine, right?
or they assume that the word of mouth will do it for it.
Yes. Yeah.
And when you're starting out a brand new business, word of mouth isn't enough because maybe
well,
you'll
there
get
isn't any yet.
there isn't any yet, right?
Word of mouth takes a good 2 to 3 years to build up. Once it gets going, if you've done it right, it's great.
Right.
It can't be the word of your mouth. Like it's your business.
Right.
What else are you going to say? You're going to say something bad about your business?
Well, that's also a key portion of it because a lot of people expect that word of mouth is going to trump doing a good job.
Right.
But so many people go into business figuring, well, I'm just going to let the word of mouth build it up, and I'm not going to have to really actually do a great job all the time. I'll do like just enough to get by, and that's good enough. And then they wonder why the word of mouth doesn't work later on.
It goes hand in hand.
It does.
So, like, I don't know who you're talking to, but they're backwards.
Oh God! Well, you just weren't in my business. That's all. I mean, that's all. That's what the people who come to you aren't the ones who are successful. They're the ones who come to you for help with their marketing and their websites are the people who don't know how to do it properly.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
They don't understand how to turn it into a winning proposition.
Yeah.
That doesn't prevent them from actually believing that they know better than you. It just means they don't know how to do it.
I have a similar issue with marketing because my marketing, people are literally wearing it every day. So if they go home and change what I've done or don't listen to what I say they need to do to maintain what I've done, they're walking around looking crazy and they're going, oh, Alex King did this. Oh, no, she didn't.
No.
No, the original style, show the pictures. That's what I
show the pictures.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, this is something actually I was talking to my son about. Because he's just started a Twitch channel, and he did a live stream on Sunday, and he ran into a couple of technical problems. He got frustrated, and he ended the stream an hour and a half earlier than he said he would.
Ooh.
And I was explaining to him that you're in show business now. And when you're in show business, you're only as good as your last production.
Right.
You're only, and if you run into a technical problem, you have to think into your mind, the show must go on. You work through the problem, the technical problem and whatever, and then you work to improve upon the product. Saying saying, oh no, I'm running into technical problems, I give up, you've now turned off whatever audience you have, and they may never come back.
This is actually quite humorous, Bill, because you don't realize it. But right now, you have a technical problem. Your voice is getting skipped again and going through the clippings. So you're describing this issue about having technical problems, working through it while you're having technical problems. That's pretty cool.
Right.
That, I was just going to say that. The irony right now, palpable.
Right. I mean, I could say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm having technical problems, I'll bow out right now.
Yeah.
But no, we're moving on. We're doing the best we can, and we'll try and fix the problem later. With if the problem is even fixable, if it's an internet connection problem, then that's out of my control.
Unless you're Comcast,
it is
reset your router.
I think I'm probably going to end up doing that. I mean, the streaming service we have here works just fine through that router.
Right.
But I've been noticing with Zoom especially that I've been having these
lag issues,
little lag issues. So, and I'm teaching a class on Saturday where I'm going to have 8 participants on one Zoom call. So I hope it's going to be okay.
Yeah, so better to get this out of the way now than, trying to explain something later. And people are going, what?
But in terms of I know we're digressing into marketing, but apologizing is worse than just moving on. I mean, and I told them a story about a theater company where the power went out, and they were right in the middle of the first act, and so rather than just sit there saying, "Sorry, folks, you got to go home now," they broke out flashlights, and they finished the show with flashlights.
There's a rather famous example from the older television era, 1970s. One of the more popular shows during that era was called The Carol Burnett Show. Carol Burnett, of course, was the host. And there was one particular episode where they lost all their power. They couldn't broadcast. They couldn't do anything. They were trying to get the power back because it was a live show. They didn't pre-record it. It was being done live, and so they were trying to get the power back so they could get it back to the network, which meant Carol couldn't go anywhere, and they had to like be ready to do whatever the next skit was as soon as the power came back. But now they have this live studio audience that's just sitting there waiting for something to happen.
Yeah.
So Carol just went out and did some Q&A with them. And when the camera came back on, she was in the middle of Q&A. It turned out to be the most popular episode they ever did because the Q&A was so good.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So she basically didn't, bat an eye. She went out and just did her Q&A, did her interaction with the audience. And that ultimately turned into a regular feature. She did start doing Q&A every single week because it was so popular out of that one episode where they lost power.
Those used to be our popular episodes, our Q&As.
Yeah, that's true. We used to do a lot of Q&As. Yeah, and people I think they ran out of questions. So I'm not sure exactly what happened.
I think they got confused on how to now that we switched over to YouTube.
Well, no, they lost interest in doing that while we're still live streaming to Facebook. I mean, there were times where we'd have people tuned in and we'd ask them, anybody have any questions? And we'd get like dead silent. So like, okay, I guess we've done it.
No, I've been here 6 months. You've answered all my questions.
That's it. Yeah.
I'm just here for the juice, man.
Thank goodness we supply the juice. I love that.
Yeah.
Gotta have that juice.
The juice is important. Well, the juice.
And if there's anybody out in the live audience that wants to ask us a question, we'd be more than happy to answer.
More than happy. Come on in.
And I agree. Since we switched over to YouTube, we get fewer live stream listeners, and I'm hoping that we can kind of shift that around. So we need to get more people tuning in. I should probably do the announcements at this point.
Yes, you should.
That's how we get people to join the live stream. So I'm gonna reverse the order. Why don't you tell people, Alex, how to join the live stream? Where to find us on YouTube, how to subscribe, how to get notified, all that good stuff. Once you figure out where your bottle cap went.
Okay, focus, people. Focus in. As you're listening to my voice, go to YouTube. Search LOA Today podcast videos. Find us and our happy faces. Hit the subscribe button. Next to it, there's a bell. Hit that bell and hit always so you'll be notified every time we go live. And I'm done.
Nicely done. You got their attention. It was great.
Yes, you got to focus up.
Well, while we've got the attention that Alex brought you in on, I'm going to ride that one a little bit and tell you also how you subscribe to the podcast. And it's so simple. Go to loatoday.net. Follow the directions. Congratulations, you are now subscribed.
Short, sweet, and to the point. Love it. Welcome.
I realize that following directions is outside the norm these days, but these are actually pretty easy directions. So don't sweat it.
Just click, click, click till you hear us.
That's pretty much it. Yeah. The hardest one is the first click.
Yeah.
The first click is the hardest, but once you get the first done, the second one's pretty easy.
No, the first cut is the deepest in my head.
Sorry about that.
Oh my
But
goodness.
seriously, please do subscribe and of course share the fact that you're subscribed, because that's how more and more people find out about the show and get their daily doses of happy, which is where that energy comes from. That's what we were just talking about, was that energy.
And if you're listening to or watching us on YouTube and you're enjoying this episode, give us a thumbs up. If you don't like it, give us a thumbs down. Write us a comment. We have, what is it? Keyboard warrior. And let us know how you feel.
And there is your social media introduction for the day.
We like the positive comments, and we'll take constructive criticism.
Facts.
It does help if the comments are coherent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we have occasionally, not often, most often we get thumbs up and we get positive comments and constructive comments and so forth. But every once in a while we get a comment and I read it and I say, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And the energy is lost. The energy is like, I want to respond. It's like, were they happy?
It's like, thank you.
Yeah. Like, thank you for your concern.
No, that's when you send out the automatic email. It said, thank you for responding to LOA Today. We appreciate your comments and
Please contact us during our normal business hours.
Thank you for being concerned enough to write something.
Thank you, question mark, exclamation point.
Hashtag thank you.
Hashtag
Thank you. There you go.
Exactly.
Well, we kind of danced around the topic, but let's see if we can find some way to kind of pull it together in the last few minutes here. Because the basic topic was, how do you deal with family members and people who are close to you who are problematic? I see Alex's hand raised. Yeah, Alex, we actually are past primary school. You don't have to raise your hand anymore. You can just speak up. So
it's an automatic thing. I was the kid in class going, me. Wait, no, I know this one. This reminds me of a podcast we had a long time ago where we were discussing religion, and there was a listener who was telling us their story about how they were, I want to say, Jehovah's Witnesses or Amish or something, and how they realized the truth and had to get out, and they ended up leaving their home, and the whole community had cut themselves off, and her best friend wasn't allowed to speak to her, and she's I think you remember that one. She saw her in the street and she was like not allowed to speak to her because she wasn't part of the religion anymore. And it's like, but you know what, sometimes if it's not conducive to you, that's what you got to do.
It's true. Yeah. And funny things can happen too. Like, I know somebody who, you mentioned Jehovah's Witness. This isn't Jehovah's Witness, but it's kind of in the same general ballpark. Seventh-day Adventist.
Seventh-day. Oh boy.
Same kind of, same general issue in a sense.
Yeah.
And she had pretty much moved away from them, spiritually speaking. But then she went back to attend the church, not because she believed in the belief, but because that's where her social ties were. So she's now a contributing member of that church, but she doesn't believe what they believe. Huh. And what's interesting is, because she was a member before, they accept her.
That's fine.
And her spouse.
It's the same thing in my family. We all were taught at a young age we were all Episcopalian. In my immediate family, we were not forced to go to church because my mother was as a child. So she was like, I don't want that for my children. When they get old enough to choose their own religion, they can do that. So that sprinkled out throughout my whole family. And later on in life, me and my cousin did go to church. And then he moved down south and met this woman. And then he became a Seventh-day Adventist. But because we all respect each other, no one pushes their religion on the other person. And I value that. Like he'll say what he's doing in his church. He's an whatever he does in usher, elder, whatever he does now. And I'm like, oh, cool, you got all these responsibilities. Look at you. But he never says, okay, this is what you need to do, or according to my religion, this is how I would handle it. We don't do that. We don't do that.
That's cool. That's good. Yeah. Especially considering this is also an interesting phenomenon. Sometimes you find people who are very religious, and they will make it very clear that they are not going to try to force their religion on you. And then they will never miss an opportunity to suggest something about their religion.
True.
Like, what's up with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's another thing you have to sometimes deal with. You just have to deal with the fact that people are not always truth tellers.
Yeah, no, that's true.
You have to kind of be ready for it. That's where indifference comes in. To me, that's where the real power of indifference is, because the moment that when you learn how to be indifferent toward things that you really don't want to attract into your life anymore, you get to the point where you can kind of turn it off and turn it on at will.
Yes.
And when you can do that, then you deal with somebody who does this little passive aggressive thing that I just described. And they say, well, I'm really not trying to push my religion on you. And then they try to surreptitiously push their religion on you. Then I become indifferent.
Yeah.
And the conversation ends really quickly.
Yeah.
It's funny how that is. When you aren't giving them the energy back, it's like the game that Louise used to play with her clients when she was still a therapist. When the client was trying to learn boundaries and trying to understand how they worked and what they're all about and how to use them and so forth. She had a couch like most therapists do, and the couch had throw pillows. She would take one of the throw pillows and toss it to her client, and her client would catch it. And she'd say, okay, I'll throw it back. So she'd throw it back, or he or she would throw it back. Louise would catch it, and now catch it. She'd throw it to him again. She said, now throw it back. They throw it back, and this time she let it fall to the floor.
I got it.
And of course, the lesson was the game only works if you continue to play it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Facts.
But if you become indifferent, you stop playing the game ends.
Mm-hmm.
As much as the other person might try to they may try to pick the pillow up again and throw it to you.
Oh, yes.
But if you keep letting it drop to the floor, do it 2 or 3 times, and they're going to lose interest really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how fast that works.
Sounds like my dating life.
You throw a lot of pillows around, do you?
No, I drop the pillows.
You drop pillows. Oh,
quickly.
Okay.
I don't, like, I see your pillow, but it's on the floor. Bye.
It's on the floor, yeah. So, well, we're almost toward the end here. We haven't covered all of the different strategies here, but we covered a few of them. Bill, you have something more you wanted to throw in for a strategy or something?
Yes, I did want to throw in something else. And again, and I think we've touched on pretty much all of it. But if you are finding yourself in a situation though when you want to be a deliberate creator and you're having resistance from your family and you don't know how to deal with it, and you feel like you've got some soul programs or whatever, please send me a text, give me a call, and we'll work it out.
There you go. All right, so you can get professional help. That's always a good thing too.
Mm-hmm.
So with that thought in mind, thank you guys for sharing your strategies on how to deal with those troublesome family members who can try to get their agendas in your way. We appreciate that so much. Thank you to our live stream listeners, and especially to our many hundreds of podcast listeners, because they're the ones who really make all this worthwhile. And we will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.